Today's video is brought to you by Glass Spider Publishing. Offering a wide range of hybrid book publishing services, Glass Spider Publishing is your one-stop shop for professional editing, design, publication, and book marketing services. Visit glassspiderpublishing.com today to learn more. All right, friends, for today's painting, I am using this. It is just a 5 by 7 inch canvas board that I have glued into just a cheap decorative picture frame. You can use whatever kind of glue you have on hand to put it in the frame. Now I'm going to start with a black background. I'm going to paint the picture frame black and everything. Little bits of my painting are going to extend onto the frame. So that's why I'm painting it in the frame. I'm going to just use black gesso, though you could use black paint if you really want to. It really doesn't matter. I like the texture of gesso because it's very dry and toothy, which is nice. So just grab a stiff bristle brush and let's start putting some gesso in there. I really want to focus on getting the gesso into the texture of the frame also. So that's why I'm using a stiff bristle brush. A soft brush is not going to have the strength to get down into that texture. So I've been doing some paintings like this within the last year, and I had a lot of people expressing interest in it. So that's why I decided to make my return with something fun and different like this. You don't have to use a picture frame if you don't want to. If you don't have one, or the thought of painting an image or extending it onto the frame, it seems daunting to you, you don't have to. You can do it however you like. The size and shape and whatever type of canvas doesn't matter at all. Sometimes I think painting the gesso onto the frame is the part that takes the longest out of the entire process. But it's kind of a nice exercise in mindfulness, you know, just kind of watching what you're doing and taking your time on it. Don't try to rush through anything. I feel like over the last year or so, part of the reason I got so burnt out and quit making videos was because I was not painting very mindfully. You know, I had gotten used to painting for work, and then the stress of, you know, maintaining that. I have to make a painting or I'm not going to have a job. I let it kind of take away the meditative quality of painting for me. And that's what I love the most about painting, is it's kind of my time to be mindful and meditative. But if you're going to use it as time to be, you know, aggressive and hard on yourself, then it's not going to be an enjoyable process that you're going to want to come back to time and again. So be gentle and be patient. And I'm saying that to myself as much as I'm saying it to you, because I really want to be here with you guys. I want to, you know, be bringing you painting videos and inspiring you to do something that makes you happy. But I can't do that if I'm not having the exact same experience. I'm not worried about the very edges. I don't know if you can tell that the very edges around the back here, they will show once it's hanging on the wall, but I'm not worried about it right now. When I'm done with the whole painting, I'll just take some black paint and paint that part. It's kind of unnecessary right now, especially since I'm painting with gesso. Gesso is really dark or a really kind of a matte look and textural, so I'm going to want to paint over it anyway later. All right, I think that's good. I'm going to go ahead and let this dry, and then we can get started. Okay, my gesso is dry, but before we get started, you want to kind of look at it and look in the textures, and then up in the corners. See, I've got some white up there. Look in all the textures in the corners and make sure you don't see any white. If you do, just touch up those spots and then we'll be ready to go into the painting. Okay, so our canvas is all prepped. Let's go ahead and start drawing where we want our candle and flame. So I've just got a chalk pencil here. You could use a watercolor pencil, a piece of chalk. You can use whatever you like. It's all going to be painted over. I'm just going to start with kind of a center line where everything's going to be basically on the center line. Because everything in this painting is going to extend onto the frame. Frame and flame. That's going to cause me some stuttering today. All right, so the flame is actually going to be kind of the focus of the painting. So let's get the idea of where the flame is going to be. I probably don't want it any taller than right about there. And we'll have it come down. Nice substantial flame. Something like that. Our wick will be right in there. So the top of our candle will be somewhere around here. We'll make it a little asymmetrical, like it's been dripping a bit. I like that. Just pull it out a little bit farther so we can make it a little bit wider. I like that kind of swoop like that. And then the edge, fairly straight. I am drawing it here, but I'm probably gonna kind of fade it out at the bottom a bit. And then we'll have a little bit of a glow around the flame that's gonna extend up. And I'll probably have a bit of that glow kind of reaching out onto some of the texture around the edges. I'm gonna start with my number 6 Filbert. I wet it in my jar, wiped it on a paper towel a little bit, and I want to start with the glow around the flame. So I'm going to get a little bit of Cad Red Medium. I'm not loading up with a ton of paint here. I want this to be pretty transparent. And some Cad Orange. Just a nice warm color there. And some medium. Now, these colors are opaque because I'm using professional paint. And so even though I'm making it transparent, you'll still be able to see it because it'll have a little bit of a chalky, I don't mean to make it sound like chalk, but because it's opaque, even when you make it transparent, you can still see it. It's basically what I'm getting at here. Get it all up in there. Fade it on the edges here. I don't want a big hard circle. You can take it out a little farther than you think you might want it because we are going to end up painting the background. We're not going to leave it black gesso. So don't worry if your color's too stark or too big or too anything at this point, because we can paint over all of it. In fact, I'd rather have you go a little bit farther out than you know you want it, because then when we do paint the background, you won't lose so much of it. I'll just give just a brush of this onto the texture. That's an okay start. I'm not cleaning off my brush, just going straight into my Cad Yellow. Maybe a bit of orange in there as well. Nice bright color. A little bit of medium. And let's fill in the top of our candle. You can use a different brush for this if you're more comfortable with that. pull that line down and kind of let it feather out at the bottom. We don't want a hard line at the bottom here. Nice and feathered. Let's warm it up with a bit more orange. Just keep those edges fairly straight. It's okay if there's little bulges or wonkiness, but for the most part, you want to keep it pretty straight. Just red, still have not cleaned off my brush. Feather it up into the other colors here. This is just the base of colors, so I know this looks really flat, kind of dumb, but it's okay. And again, we're going to keep that feathered down. No hard line here. All right, now I've washed off my brush, but I'm going to pick up a little bit of my red and some paints. A nice dark color here. Don't worry about too much here, lines staying straight down here where we get onto the frame, because we're going to kind of blur that out. So just get the color there and everything else is fine. I'm going to go to my number 10 round brush and I'm going to load up with some red and some orange. And I'm going to touch into my medium. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's going to help me get some kind of broken lines here. Just kind of generally filling this in, but this outer edge it's going to be a little bit more broken. A little more medium. A little bit more medium. Picked up a tiny bit more paint, a tiny bit more medium. Just gonna kind of play with the edges here. gonna want this to be really, really warm and glowy. Just cad orange and a little bit of medium. I'll just brighten it up here where it's gonna be the closest to the flame. I'm not worried about painting over where the flame's gonna be. Let's just go ahead and fill that in. Maybe I'll fill it in with a mix of my orange and yellow, because the white flame does have a little bit of an aura of warmth to it. So we'll just kind of start that here. That's not looking too bad. I'm gonna keep this dirty brush. I'm gonna get some more yellow, a little bit of medium. Maybe I'll throw a little bit of white in there. And let's get this part filled in just a little bit more. Refine our shape and really start working on how bright it's going to be up here. So as I was recording this, I realized that I wasn't really speaking and giving instruction or, just engaging in a way that I normally do. I had a lot on my mind that day, and honestly, I am still struggling just a little bit with some of the anxieties that I was going through while making videos. So I decided to just allow myself the luxury of painting without having to think and just do a voiceover for the rest of it. So that's what we're doing here. I'm just gonna warm up that color a little bit more vibrant, more orange as we move down the candle. Remember that those first layers, it's okay for them to be kind of thin, kind of weird looking, kind of just messy, because they're just laying the foundation for what comes next. It's gonna be really hard on a black canvas to get these colors immediately to be as dense and as vibrant as we need them to be in a single layer. So don't feel like you're doing it wrong or wasting your time if you find that you have to do several layers. I like to do each layer just a little bit different because it gives a little bit more depth to the finished painting. So there I just mixed a bit more red in and just kind of pulling that up into the orange. Make sure that you do not keep hard lines between these colors. That's gonna feel really strange. The matte medium here is really, really helpful in getting it to blend. Even if the color above it is already dry, remember that the matte medium thins down the paint, makes it transparent, and it can make it really look like you're blending wet into wet, even if you're working on top of dry paint. So I let my painting dry. I'm using looks like my number 6 round now, though it could still be my number 10. I don't remember, it really doesn't matter. mixing up a nice warm color and thinning it down quite a bit with some matte medium. So the inside of the candle is that brightest color, the mostly pure yellow. But on the outside, right here where I'm working, we're going to warm it up and deepen it just a little bit because the light isn't necessarily falling directly on it because this is the outside of the candle. So it's getting more of a glow from within rather than direct light on, if that makes sense at all. Take some time to kind of play with this outer edge, but pay attention to your perspective. If our candle is about eye level with us, the top edge, the melted part, if that's about eye level with us, you're not going to see a big open circle at the top of the candle. You might just see into it just a tiny bit. If the candle is below your eye level, then you would be able to see most of that top portion where the wax is melting and pooling. You would see more of that. If the part of the candle is above your eye level, you're not going to see any of it. So really pay attention to what you want your candle to look like, what kind of a perspective you want. If you feel like it's eye level, but looking at it, it feels like you're seeing a huge amount of the inside, then your perspective's off. Just close that up just a little bit. Now I'm mixing some of my Payne's Gray with the red. This is going to be a really nice shadow color. I know it feels kind of strange on the palette there, but when used in conjunction with those bright, vibrant colors, it's really effective as a shadow color. So just layering on that bottom area again, blending up into the warmer, glowy areas. A really light touch is going to help blend that in, and a little extra medium is going to make it work even smoother. Is going to make it even smoother. Nice feathery touches there. Little medium to smooth out that canvas texture. I'm really enjoying getting back into painting. I took a break from it for about 9 months. I didn't paint at all. And for a while there, I kind of felt like, well, maybe I won't paint it all ever. But it's been really nice making myself get back to it, to get back in front of the easel and put my fears and my anxieties aside and, just paint. And I know that you guys, a lot of you go through very similar things regularly. I hear all the time people ask me things like, I really want to paint, but I'm so afraid. How do I get back to it? I'll pull out all my paints and just sit and look at it and then put it away because I'm just too afraid. And I think that the best way to get over that is to just do it. Just start painting, even if it's just, slapping a color all over a canvas and, not having anything, quote unquote, productive at the end. That's a good start. Doing a tutorial, that's a good way to get you moving again. Just do something that gets you moving. Here I'm really starting to build the brightness in the inside of that candle. So I picked up yellow, pretty much solid yellow, and I'm applying it thicker. I'm also starting to kind of make a little drip down one side. Remember that because the outside of the candle, the background is black, and we are painting with Payne's Gray on the outside, that you can experiment with the shape of your candle, with drips and things like that, because anything you don't like, you can just paint over it with the Payne's Gray or even black when we get to the background. So don't stress about that. If you want to experiment with the big blobby melted candle wax drip down one side, do it. And ultimately, if you don't like it, it will be really easy to paint over and get rid of. This is my number 8 Filbert, the short handle one from my original line of brushes. But whatever you're comfortable with, if you're more comfortable with a round brush or something right here, that's okay too. Warm that color up a little bit with some orange and a hint of red. A little bit of medium to smooth it out, and just working on those colors again, really aiming for vibrancy, almost pure color. I know the top of that candle looks so weird and wonky right now, and I think that it stays looking like that until I get the details, the shadow and highlight details on there. So at this point, if you really hate the way the top of your candle looks, don't sweat it, just go with it. It will work out. I had to close that up. What I was saying earlier about the perspective, if you can see too much of that top, then your perspective might be off. I felt like I could see too much of that top, so I just closed it up a little bit with that color. Almost pure red there. My brush is dirty, so there's still a little bit of the orange, but pretty much working with pure red. Keep going back and forth on that drip there. I did it, and then I decided I didn't want it, and then I come back and I add it back in. Remember, if at any point while you're doing these layers, if you're using the matte medium, if you feel like the medium is starting to get sticky or gooey, that's something I hear a lot. What that means is that you're overworking your paint. So if you're using the medium and you're thinking, God, this is really sticky, then stop, let it dry. Even if it doesn't look great, if you continue to work it, it's just gonna look worse. It's okay to let it dry and then come back and continue. In fact, that's gonna be preferable if you're finding your paint to be sticky. Just going back into the Flame Glow with some yellow and some matte medium. I really wanna make sure that the inside of this, it's kind of like the aura of the flame. And I wanna make sure that that's nice and bright and glowy. So just getting some transparent yellow on there. I know it looks messy and wild right now, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. Just keep wiping out those edges because I don't want any hard lines in there. I want to reserve the hard line for the white of the flame so it feels very special. Cleaned off my brush, a little bit more of that shadowy red color. And just continuing at the bottom here, making sure that I've got a little bit of that color that extends down onto the frame. It's just a very subtle effect there at the bottom, and I really like that. Just picking up some medium there to help extend that thin shadowy color up the side of the candle. A little blob of dried paint in there. If that happens, if you get a hair or a blob of dried paint, all you want to do is take the tip of your brush and just kind of poke it out, and it will come right out. I'll show you here. So poke toward it, and that will take it right out. Don't try to, stick your fingernail in there or whatever. Just use the tip of the brush, and it'll lift right out. Dirty brush, still mixing up a little bit more of that, but I want to keep it warmer, a little more on the red side. Not quite so dark. And the medium, of course. Just kind of almost a highlight on the shadow side, if that makes sense. I switched to my number 6 round here and picked up that color, and what I'm going to do is introduce a bit of shadow at the top edge here where the wax may have folded over, kind of crinkled in a little bit. It might just be a little bit thicker there than the rest of the wax in that area, and so the shadow is going to be a little bit deeper. And I'm going to start bringing back that drip, just adding a little bit of a shadow on the side of it. A little bit brighter. Tiny bit of water there. Still finding that little drip on the side. It doesn't really matter what color you use to make the drip, whether it's the yellow or the shadow color, it doesn't matter because all of these colors are really closely related. So just pick one, put the drip in there so that you can see it, and then you can come back and work your highlight and shadow colors to bring out the detail in it. Over here, I just took some orange on my cleaned off round brush and just kind of putting it at the top here, overlapping a little bit of that shadow color, just so the shadow color doesn't seem so plopped on top. It's just kind of integrating them a bit. Just adding a little bit more dimension and highlight to that little drip on that side of the candle. I'm going to put a bigger drip on the other side. See, just take it outside of that candle shape. Doesn't matter how far down you take it. But if you're going to do more than one drip, make sure that they are, for the most part, different lengths. That one goes farther down than the other one. These are a little too close to the same length for me, so I'm going to bring that left one down quite a bit more. Just a nice dirty color. Like I said, it really doesn't matter at this point what color you use to build those drips. And I really like to use that shadowy color on the side of the drip where the drip attaches to the body of the candle. That just helps give it some nice dimension. And then I keep the more pure colors like there, the red, for kind of the highlighted areas, or the areas where the light is glowing through the candle into the drip. If you're having a hard time understanding what the drips might look like, get online, just do a Google image search for, a picture of a burning candle, and really study the way you can see the top of the candle. Study what the drips look like. Study what the flame looks like, what the glow around it looks like. And I think you'll see that candles and flames, they all look so different. There's some basic rules and principles that are pretty universal no matter what kind of candle or flame it is, but for the most part, there's a lot of room for artistic interpretation here, but I think doing some Google image searches is a really good way to kind of narrow down what you like, what you don't like, what you're comfortable with. That is an area that I thought where the wax was going to be actively pouring out, so that yellow, I've got it kind of drooping down on the right there. Back to my number 6 Filbert. It's nice and stiff, helps get the paint down into the texture. And I just picked up some Payne's Gray to start filling in the background and cleaning up the edges of the candle. Little medium just to glaze some of that Payne's over top of the base of the candle. I love the idea of the base of it kind of disappearing, fading into the darkness of the background. And one thing that does, fading the bottom of it into the background, is it keeps the top of the candle and the flame very crisp and sharp, and makes sure that they're very special that that's what you want to look at in the image. If everything in this painting is very crisp, has very distinct hard edges, there's not really going to be something special to look at. But keeping all of the edges nice and fuzzy, except for the really important parts, make sure that they are special. My number 8 filbert, because I needed a little bit more precision to get in here around the edge of the candle. That large brush is really good at getting into the texture, but it's not really a precision tool that is going to help me get super crisp and clean edges like I want here at the top. So if you had any drips or weird shapes in your candle, this is where you can get rid of them. Just use that precision tool to go over top of them and cut in a new shape that you do want to see. So the bottom of my drip, especially here on the left, is a little bit formless, doesn't really have a distinct shape. But watch how I'm going to take this brush right there and swoop underneath it and give it a very specific shape. Now it doesn't just kind of end in a weird shapeless mass. See how transparent I'm making that with a little bit of medium? Just a glaze right under the drip. All right, clean number 6 round. Just picked up some orange and I'm working on the highlights again on my little drips. This one on the right especially doesn't have a very distinct form yet, so I'm just going to spend a couple minutes on it. Little medium to make sure I'm not obliterating everything. A little bit of pure color. One thing to be cautious of here, if you've got long drips like I do on the left there, don't get too bright at the bottom. Save the very bright colors of paint for closer to the top or areas that really poke out far, and save the darker colors mostly for the bottom or for the recessed areas, the deeper parts. So there I am at the top, but that's a recessed area, so I'm putting a little bit of that shadow color in. And there, that little bit of shadow on the right, and now I can tell it's a drip just from that one little brush stroke. It kind of brought the whole thing together. Clean brush again, bright orange. Just starting to work on a few highlights on top of that shadow area. Candles are so unique because they are a source of light, but that doesn't mean that there's not shadows and highlights. But the shadows and highlights are also caused by different things, whether it's a shadow because the light isn't falling on it, or it's a shadow because the material is thicker. So it's a lot of fun to kind of play with that. It's a very unique thing to painting a very solid, opaque object that is just taking direct light or not. So kind of like glass, it can be a little bit challenging, but just look at lots of pictures and kind of familiarize yourself with the way the light interacts with the object. Clean brush picked up some yellow and some white. I'm going for a really pale but really bright color here because I'm going to start highlighting the interior of the candle, the part that is melting, the part that is the closest to the flame. So building up that texture, that paint is quite a bit thicker and it's a lot lighter and brighter. That's pretty thick paint there. It's also very light, giving kind of a bit of a highlight to the top edge opposite the edge that has the shadow on it. Nice sharp point, because I'm going to put a couple of little reflection points on this shadow bit. This is almost pure white that I'm working with at this point. See, I just dunked straight into the little ball of paint, applying some of that thickly to the far side of the top edge. And there we are done with the body of the candle. I've got my clean number 6, mixing up a warm color with both my yellow and my orange. And I lied, I'm just filling in the very bottom of that interior shape. Couple extra punches with that bright color on the drips. And here I've got an old scrubby angle brush. mixing up my shadow color. It doesn't matter what kind of a brush you use here. I just didn't want to use something terribly soft because I'm going to be glazing, and I wanted to make sure not to get any brush marks. So I'm just going to kind of lay in some of that slightly brighter shadow color onto the base of the candle. Just right there in the center. I could have used my Filberts for this. Just keep it soft. Keep all of those brush marks soft. I'm not going all the way to the edge of where the candle would be, letting those remain in shadow. Just the part of the candle that I feel like is facing us, that's the closest to us. Warm that up just a little bit so that I can blend it in to the area above. So I wanted to paint this candle for my first painting back because the painting feels very hopeful to me. It feels very inspiring. It feels very centering. It feels very meditative, like I could look at the painting and feel centered and confident and ready to work. And I feel like that's something that I really need. I mean, obviously I haven't made any videos in almost a year, and that last video that you saw, that was also the last time that I had painted at all. So it can be a little daunting to decide to come back and, you know, jump right back in. What if I forgot how to paint? What if I forgot how to talk? Which I kind of feel like I did. What if I forgot all of it? And so this image, as I'm painting it for you, it's also helping me with my confidence and my grounding so that I can get back to it and do this job that I desperately want to do. And if this is your return to painting, or maybe this is your beginning to painting, I hope that it can help you feel the same way. And maybe it's not your return or your beginning to painting. You've been painting the whole time, but maybe you just feel like you need a little extra bit of confidence or encouragement. And so I hope that this does that for you as well. This is my number 6 Filbert. A little bit of a warm color here. Doesn't really matter what color of warm, but I'm mixing a good amount of medium with it so it's a bit transparent. And I'm just gonna glaze very lightly this entire flame aura area. Again, you don't have to worry about taking it out too far. You don't have to worry about the edges being tidy because I haven't painted that area yet. I cleaned off the brush and just picked up a little bit of medium to kind of help me push some of that around. It was a bit thick and I didn't want it to, you know, obscure anything too much. I just wanted a bit of that color. Some of that paint's a little thick, just wiping it away, and then I think we are good to move on. Number 6 round. Some bright yellow, a little bit of orange. We're going to start doing the glow for the actual flame itself. I'm not just going to plop the flame on top of this. I want to give it a little bit of a hazy glow in the exact same shapes. So I mixed a little yellow, a little orange, and some white with some medium. So it's going to be a pretty pale color and slightly transparent from the medium. Start where I want the flame to be the very highest and bring it down. That's a really crisp line, and I don't want it that crisp, but we're gonna just start there. And we can soften it up. And I just picked up a little bit more yellow and orange and a point of medium. And I'm just lightly going over that edge. That's what's going to kind of soften it and help get that glow. Make sure you do that, obviously, before the light color in the middle dries. And if it's not soft enough, just use your finger to wipe it out and smear it. Now, I didn't realize at this point that my flame is up too high, that I actually want the bottom of my flame to come down farther. But I'm going to show you how I took care of that, and it's pretty easy. So if you have the same issue, just hang tight. We're going to take care of that. This is a much more on the white side of that color. There's still a little bit of yellow in there, but it's very, very white, pretty thick, mostly filling in that shape, but maintaining the soft edges. Just dunked right into some white, the brightest point right in the middle of the flame. And then I thought I would do, at the bottom of a flame, a lot of times you'll see like a little transparent, warm area right in here. So I thought I'd just jump straight to that. And then I realized that my flame is up too high, so I kind of abandoned it. So you can do this part here or not. I will end up coming back to it. If your flame's in the right place, then you're fine to go ahead and do this part. Clean brush, dunking straight into my panes. I'm going to do the wick. I almost said stem, but it's not a stem. It's definitely a wick. So make sure that it goes into your flame, but not too terribly far. It only goes in just a little bit. The flame sits pretty much on the end of the wick. I wasn't sure what kind of a shape I wanted on the wick here, and even what color, so I kind of get this muddy, yellowish, brownish color in a minute here, and try and make a wick that's not burnt at the bottom, but I very quickly get rid of that. Here's where I picked up pretty much pure white, and I'm bringing the bottom of my flame down a little bit more. And then I can easily paint over the wick inside that goes up too high. Here's that muddy color that I started doing at the bottom of the wick, but I decided it just looked wrong. Technically, the wick would probably not be black all the way down to the base of the candle as long as it is, but it's what I felt looked the best. But if you like your wick to look unburned at the base, that's fine. and a clean damp brush to get off that other bit of wick that I didn't like. Just evening it out, making sure I like the shape. Clean brush, lots of yellow, a little bit of white, pretty bright still. And some medium to thin it down just a little bit. One more time on the outer edge there, just to keep a very soft, misty feel to the outer edge. But also I'm going to elongate that flame one more time, so I wanted to bring that down lower. Just about pure white on a clean brush. Get rid of that wick that goes up too high. Reshape my flame, just make sure it's nice and bright. It's okay if the paint on the interior of the flame, this mostly pure white, it's okay if that paint is a little thick and textural. That's really gonna draw your eye to the flame and make it special. Here's that ratty angle again. And I picked up Payne's and Medium. And I have not put Payne's and Medium up here at the top yet. And any of that glaze that got too far out of control, I'm just lightly scumbling over the edge of it and glazing on it. So like I said when we were doing that part, don't be afraid to get it too far out, because it's going to be super easy to cover later, as you can tell. Just a light scumble. Just kind of getting some Payne's all throughout. Make sure that at least most of the frame has the Payne's on it. I thought about doing little bits of splatters up in the glow of the flame, but I resisted, which was really hard for me because I love to do splatters, as I'm sure you know. So if you have been tempted to do some little splatters in there, but you think, oh, maybe that wouldn't be a good idea, I encourage you to go for it. You know, it could look like little sparks, little motes of whatever. I think it just could make it look a little magical. Here I've just mixed up a warm color again with some medium, kind of doing that glow at the base of the flame like we talked about, and then glazing it out into the flame a bit. I'm also going to cover the tip of the wick with that color because it's going to kind of push it inside the flame a little bit more. Nice and transparent. Right over that wick. Very light feathering up into the white. Speaking of white, some of that glaze got away from me, so I had to put a little more white on. And here I'm just taking a mixture of those warm colors with a little bit of medium and just kind of adding like some little flamey, textury bits in the glow. You can definitely skip this part if you're not comfortable, but I'm just kind of making like these little wormy shapes and then taking the tip of the brush to break them up because I don't want these big orange and yellow wormy shapes around the edge of the flame. That's just how they have to start out. I almost went with a very simple glow, but I'm always tempted by texture, and I saw an opportunity to have some fun texture and shapes in that area, so I couldn't just do a simple glow. Just keep your paint thin, and you can get rid of anything you don't like. See, just dunking straight into the medium. That one right there on the left is kind of getting away from me. So a little red, a point of medium. And I feel like that kind of pushed it back just a little bit more. You can always go back in with Payne's Gray as well. If something's just too bright or shaped weird, go back in with some Payne's Gray and, you know, glaze it down or get rid of it altogether. Just a little bit brighter there with some thin yellow. And a very thick application of white. I don't know if you can tell how thick that is, but there's definitely some texture to that white. It's very, very thick. So I thought I'd add just a hint of that thick, textured, pure white down into the top of the candle here as well. All right, last thing, I've got a little bit of that very thin, warm color, and I'm just gonna lightly swipe it into those corners to make it look like they're catching a little bit of light off of the flame. You can skip this part if you like, if you're not comfortable with it. Just barely touching on the texture. Tiny bit at the bottom, not as much, but I definitely don't want the bottom to just be boring and black and have nothing going on. And that is all there is to this painting. Thank you so much for painting along with me and watching, and I look forward to painting with you again very soon.